Hello, my friends. I just want to speak as far as being very much realistic of what we may be in the process of going through right now. I'm going to speak mostly to what it's like to live in the world, and things that we should expect, things that we should be mentally prepared for. The whole entirety of the apostate church, they will tell you every single time that you listen to them, rapture's coming to take us, no harm is going to come our way, no great tribulations, no nothing, we're going to be out of here, everything's going to be exactly as it is, and we're going to be gone. They will tell you that over and over again because that's what our flesh wants to hear. It's a big seller. People will buy and sell that thought process because they don't want to think about anything bad happening to them. And B, it is scriptural. We will not be here for the great tribulations. We will depart before then. But what I kind of explained in the last video that I made is there's a difference between sorrows, troubles, and great tribulations. And to the rich man, as Jesus had the conversation with, to the harlot woman, the woman who wipes the sides of her mouth and says, I've done nothing wrong, the woman who sits enthroned as a queen, the woman who says she will never mourn, the woman who is filthy rich beyond anything the world has ever seen before, with the greatest goods, and she's well fed and well kept and has all the luxuries. To that woman, the rich person, if they lose it, they feel like that is the greatest tribulations that mankind could ever experience because it's a matter of perspective. This is how the devil goes into doctrines and goes into peoples through their fear and brings them to a point where they can't understand what's actually happening. And they can't see the works of God truly in their life because the devil slips in and says things that the flesh loves to hear. So the flesh continues its own economy of it, essentially. People will make whatever it is that they need to make in order for somebody to buy it. You have all of that goes on. But what we really need to be prepared for in the West, in America specifically, is very much a trying time to come. We're already seeing things happen. I don't feel good. I haven't felt good for years, physically speaking. Weird symptoms of things that happen here and there. I see an explosion of cancer amongst the young. I see all kind of disease, essentially people sick all year round with different kinds of illnesses that you never really saw before. I see all kind of things happening to us ever since really 2020. And if you want to think about going back to those times, even a few years before that, it wasn't quite like it is now. It's almost like a light switch was hit and suddenly things are different. And they definitely are. And there's things that people don't talk about because it's scary to flesh. Do I want to suffer? No, I don't. I don't like to physically suffer. But what I tell my kids, it's what I can tell you here. I don't like to suffer, but I'm very good at doing it. I can handle it. And that should be the entirety of what the teachers should be teaching. Does anybody want to suffer? No, not particularly. Unless they're 100% certain of faith what they're going into. For instance, take Peter, who knew what was going to happen to him. Well, he was excited, essentially, before it came. But when it comes, just like Christ on the cross, you can see the flesh still is the flesh. It's still going to hurt. It's still going to cry out. And these are not bad things for the spirit. They're bad things for the flesh, but they're good things for the spirit. And we should be prepared for things such as that. Even up to and including that. We don't know. I don't think it's going to be widespread before the Great Tribulations, but there will be some amongst us who will be brutally executed, perhaps, before we ever leave this earth, as a testimony. It may happen, may not, it may. It's happening all over the world other than in the West, and it's happening on a scale that's done nothing but increase over the last 4 years. Look at China, look even in Africa, look at South Africa, look at all over the world other than the West. Christians are being executed for their faith, and I'm sure they don't particularly want to be executed. But again, for your faith, you can walk through fire. And I believe that just like the angels administered to Christ, so too are we given supernatural ability to finish that race, if that is to be the cup that we drink. And I don't believe that any of us, if we walk and drink that cup, will ever experience it to the full weight that somebody of the world would experience that. We will be given a power, a supernatural attending that we would not understand unless it comes. So first and foremost, you have to be prepared for those things mentally. Does anybody want it? Does any flesh want it? No, not particularly. But you still have to prepare to think like that. You have to prepare to think that things, just like a rich person suddenly going broke and bankrupt overnight, they lose all their house and their possessions and their cars and everything is gone. They wake up in the morning and it's just, they're sitting out in an empty lot, maybe on the bed that a caretaker wheeled out in the middle of the night, like some of those comedy movies. You have to be expecting that, because what does God promise us essentially? That there will be nothing greater than mankind has ever experienced that will come to us. And when we talk about the great tribulations themselves, Jesus describing it as a time like none other before and like there will never be after. So that is a time of difference from normal human existence. It's a different time. And we are specifically told that we will not face or have a burden any greater than anybody else before us has ever had in this world. That's what faith brings. That's a guarantee. If anybody wants to tell you there's no pre-Great Tribulation rapture, explain to them that concept. Maybe that will wake something up in them. That we're told we will not suffer beyond what we can handle, beyond what has already been given. And Jesus describing the period of his wrath as a period like none other, well, those two things contradict each other. So there has to be a remedy, a fix for those scriptures. It means that we're not going to suffer like that. We're not going into the great tribulations. But like the rich person losing it all, just losing it all will feel like that. And that's the point that I really want to drive home, to expect things that in your world right now you can't expect. It's almost like a form of being shell-shocked. And this is what spiritual warfare, actual spiritual warfare, not the fairy tale spiritual warfare that you'll hear people talk about because that's what they want to believe. I'm talking about actual spiritual warfare, being involved with the Word and watching it play out in your life, watching it testify to you, seeing things that you say happen. All kinds of different things is spiritual warfare. And you're being guided by a hand that you cannot see, as nobody has seen God, but a hand that you know is there. And when you follow that hand, Satan tries to get at you every single step of the way and will throw stumble blocks at you every single step that you take. But because of the grace of the Lord Jesus, we find a path out of that. For 10,000 die to the left, 10,000 die to the right, and we walk right through it. That is the days that we should be preparing for. Because the rich man losing everything is not great tribulations. Welcome to the world of Satan's playground, which Jesus did not deny whose world this was. That is everyday, normal Christian life, to have nothing. So though your health may decline, though your wealth may depart, though your shelter and everything else in place from you might not be what it is right now, though all these things happen, for those of us with faith, we will endure. And it's not like we worship a God that doesn't step in and intervene for us, as anybody who walks with the Lord. There are hundreds of things I can think of the top of my head that I've been intervened for. Never deserved most of these hundreds of things. But anybody who truly believes and walks with God will understand that his touch, his direct intervention is upon your life. And the Lord knows you better than you know yourself. And you think what you can handle, but the Lord knows what you can handle for the sake of others, for the sake of his word. We don't do this against our will. We serve the Lord willingly. And anybody who serves in an army, in a military, they know what is expected of them. It is like being dropped on the front lines for the very first time. That is what it will be like losing wealth, losing all these luxuries that we have been given throughout the West, and especially in America. Because if America is marked by the Scarlet A, by these series of 3 eclipses, if that is to be the case, where the Scarlet Beast is clearly identified, and by her identification you can clearly see who rides on top of her, if that is to be the case, we should expect every bit of that. Expect what we do not want to endure. Because we can, when it comes down to it. Who can endure? Those of faith can endure. They will endure to the very end, because there is always hope on the other side for those who have faith. It's that simple. If you have faith, a lot is going to be expected of you by the Lord in these days. But you will also give a lot, and you will also receive a lot in the kingdom to come. So we should always expect anything to happen, and no matter what happens, expect to endure it until the coming of the Lord. Until we are standing out saying, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord," we will endure until that point, no matter what around us happens. So that's the first part of this. Now here's the second part, which may or may not be good news for the flesh as far as what we're concerned, especially here in the United States, which very well could be marked as that Scarlet Beast. We see in New York City, and this has just happened over the last couple of days, we see, the verdict that came out against Trump. It was $355 million or whatever it was, saying that he was fraudulent with how he did his real estate ventures, or he fraudulently defrauded the bank, changing the price, overvaluing his property, whatever the actual lawsuit is. It doesn't even matter anymore. It only matters what's actually on paper in the courts. So we saw this judgment come against him, and then today I see this. Where is this? I guess I didn't put it on here. But either way, they now have said that he cannot appeal until he pays. So he has to pay the fine, which I guess was $500 million, before he could even do the appeal. They're just continuously trying to drown him in these things, and this has happened in New York City. This also is a very good way that somebody who is the Antichrist, the end-time ruler, would receive sympathy from many. So you also have to think about it like that, because I don't know who he is. He is the one person in the world that is shrouded in a darkness that I do not know him. I do not know who he is, plain and simple. I've had dreams, different kind of dreams and different kind of understandings of him, and I've thought different kind of things. Is God using him? Is God not using him? I know that he's being used, but as far as what his actual purpose is, I cannot tell you. But all I can tell you is, think about this for a second. They levy that lawsuit against him. And what happened then? The truckers come out and they say, we're going to stop delivering to New York City. The truckers, who are mostly, of course, right-wing in American politics, they're saying this is crazy. This is what everybody does. Trump does not deserve this. And until you bring back justice, we're not going to deliver anything to New York City. Now, understand that if you even get 20% of truck drivers to keep to their word on this, New York City, within a matter of a month or two, would look like some third world country, because 90 to 95% of the goods that come into New York City come by truck. And not only that, once they come in there, they're distributed by truck to all over the place. You think New York City, Ellis Island, you think the ships, and yes, there is a great merchant trade there, but most everything delivered in the United States is by truck. So you take even 20% of that out, and you get 20% food shortage on the shelf. You get 20% less supplies on the shelves. It would look like a third world, some kind of, I don't know, non-rich country. So she would lose a lot during those times. And if you see where I'm going with this, perhaps for the flesh, what we're experiencing right now is an example. The Lord is saying, because I know myself, I have not stayed true to the Lord my entire walk. I know myself, I have fallen before. And I know myself, if it wasn't for the grace of God, all of my stupidity of things that I just didn't know and things that I had thought at the time, if the Lord decided to just let me fall and not pick me back up, I wouldn't be here today explaining this kind of thing to you. But because he let me fall, and even though I was against him, he picked me back up, it gives me hope for the flesh that he's going to give New York City as that example to everybody else out there right now who is apostate and fallen, like I once was. He's going to give us a chance saying, look here, this is where I'm going to mark this great city, which we see by the angel in Revelation 17. For God has put into their hearts to accomplish his purchase by agreeing to hand over the beast and the royal authority until God's words are fulfilled. The woman you saw is the great city that rules over the kings of the earth. And you can see that Trump being a former king, royalty. You see that God has put it into them essentially to destroy themselves. And what is this trucker shortage? What would that do to New York City over a matter of short period of time? Cause great devastation to that great city. People would be fleeing out of that great city. So if God is going to use New York City as an example and then destroy it, perhaps for many who are walking apostate, perhaps they will see that example, recognize it, turn, and mourn what they're supposed to be doing now. Not drunk, not talking about escaping the great tribulations when you don't even know what great tribulations are. You can't fathom it because of your wealth. Turn, put the red on, the sackcloth, and repent. Cry out. And then see things clearly so that we can help each other to see. Instead of giving each other a pat on the back and a call out and doing collaborations and all this crazy stuff that the apostate people are doing now. Instead of those things, we can actually be sincere about what we say. All of these things, perhaps the Lord is marking New York City to enter into this great devastation and this great destruction, so that we will see it as a witness, so that many will turn whenever it is completely destroyed. And if that's the case, the punishment for the rest of the nation would not be as severe during that time. As for the rest of the nation, they would have to bear witness to it. This is the rest of God's people within America, within the Scarlet Beast. They would have to be in a position where they can bear witness to the utter destruction that God is laying upon New York City in order that they may see themselves and turn. So perhaps the Lord will spare even the flesh of those who will turn before even the trouble is allowed to come, because he's going to bring trouble first, perhaps, just to New York City and just to California. You see what's happening in California? I was given the song, It Never Rains in California, and then all of a sudden all I saw for the next 2 weeks after that was California being inundated in water. That's happening right now still. Sodom and Gomorrah, New York City and California. The two places that God is going to mark out and destroy, just like he did Sodom and Gomorrah. Perhaps he is giving the rest of the body time to see what is really going on and really see his power and see his influence and see his intervention, so that some of them, more of them than would, come out of this apostasy, come out of this hypocrisy that they walk in, and be sincere about their walk with the Lord, rather than making everything up, or rather than being prideful and boastful of things that they have not received of God. God bless.